Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle. Hey, in my series Freemasonry and Satanism. And again I remark, Freemasonry, secret societies, with the symbolism seeming to revolve around King Solomon's temple in Jerusalem, in a place formerly called Palestine, and before that the land of Canaan, and since 1948 Israel. And it was not without any small effort that it got to be named Israel in 1948. The truth of the matter is, it took hundreds of years. A race of people were exasperated, were motivated, because they continued to have problems wherever they went for 2,000 years since Jesus was born, and even further beyond that, almost 4,000 years during the Exodus from Egypt. What is the truth? So there's a program called Zionism, and I suppose it's supposed to be believed by the masses of people all over the world. It's just to solve a problem and give the Jewish people a homeland, a place of pride. So there seems to be more than that. And the second word in my title that is important is Freemasonry and Satanism. Weird how I chose those two words, Freemasonry and Satanism. But Satanism implies the devil, Lucifer, fallen angels, information that's in the Bible. Symbolism of a serpent, symbolism that's all over the world. And it seems to be connected to spirituality. And seeing that we humans are all spiritual beings in these biological bodies, so it seems to me in my investigation, things like out-of-body experience, remote viewing, people dying, coming back to life, reporting what they see, ghosts, spiritual entities, interdimensional entities, channeled by channelers, mediums, and psychics. So there does seem to be another dimension, if you want to call it that. We call it on Earth heaven or Hades. Could be another plane of existence. And apparently, on Earth, we humans, on this dimension, we are very dense beings. And it seems on these other dimensions, most of them, if not all of them, they are not so dense as we are. They're more like a ghost or spiritual being. They can manifest, maybe be a little bit more like plasma or water. They can do things. They can pop into existence and pop out of existence, as we hear a lot about in the UFO and alien information out there. So anyways, I was reading this book for the last few months off and on, trying to find something I wanted to say and get a grip on reality, what I think. And it's been a slow, tedious job trying to understand this thing called Zion, the controversies of Zion, Jewish nationalism, the Jewish state, and the unresolved Jewish dilemma. I've gone over a lot of books on this topic, made videos. This is series 170. So anyways, the guy who wrote this book, worth noting here, Geoffrey Wheatcroft. That's an interesting name there, you think? Zionism was intended to answer the Jewish question, the age-old dilemma of Jews living in the diaspora. So apparently, for about at least 2,000 years, more like 2,500 or even 3,500 years, there's been a thing called a diaspora. These Jewish people, and which seems to include a couple categories, original Arabs, or people from the desert, the Middle East, brown people. And of course then the Khazars up there by Russia, the Ukraine, Poland, Germany, Romania. They were the Khazarians, very white people. A nation that more than 1,000 years ago was without a religion. It was a very barbaric, decadent tribe. And so the king decided his people needed a religion. So he interviewed the Muslims and Arabs, and then he interviewed the Romans and Christians. And then a few Jewish rabbis came and he interviewed them. And they said they were God's chosen people. So the king of the Khazarians said, well, that's the religion I want for my people. So they embraced Judaism. But what is Judaism? Least we forget that these Hebrews, that apparently Moses is said to have helped escape Egypt, slavery, the Exodus, with the assistance of God, who told them that they were going to be given the land of Canaan. But anyways, when Moses went up to the mountain to speak to this God, and he came down the mountain, many of the Jewish people, I don't know if all, but had collected all the gold amongst themselves and built a golden calf and were practicing some religion from the ancient mysteries of their own captors, the Pharaoh religion of Egypt. A drunken orgy, kind of a satanic religion. Well, Moses was so angry, he smashed the tablets and he punished the Jews, and he had to go back up to the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights to get 2 more tablets and some laws for living, some rules for these Hebrews, Jewish people now. So that was the first major problem with the Jewish people when they did that. And there were many more after they acquired the land of Canaan and killed all of the inhabitants. They formed 12 kingdoms or 10 kingdoms and were fighting amongst themselves and did some things and were forced into wandering, dispersed. And then, of course, they were back there again and praying for a Messiah when Jesus came. Anyways, they rejected Jesus as the Messiah, had him crucified, and were dispersed again. So, several times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and over 90 different countries all over the known world, from England to France, Spain, etc. 90 different countries, according to some YouTube videos and some research I've done. They were exiled, banished, made to wear little certain emblems or labels on their clothes or certain type of hats to be identified as the Jewish people. They were policed. And even in Russia, prior to World War I, in the late 1800s and early 1900s, the Jews were fleeing Russia because of all the pogroms, policing of the Jews, restrictions, and they had found safe haven in Germany. During World War I, when Britain was losing, the elite Jews went to the British leadership and said, hey, don't surrender quite yet. We'll get you the money and the USA into the war, and you'll turn this around and win. In return, you'll assist us in obtaining the land of Palestine. So that was early 1900s. So for a couple hundred years and further back, probably 300 years, maybe further than that, likely, they had a seething desire to return to their homeland and establish a new kingdom. They wanted to bring back to life the ancient stories their grandparents were telling them of the great temples. So this was no small thing. So in the last couple of hundred years, there's been something called Aliyah, after the thousands of years of diaspora of these wandering peoples from apparently at least two different DNAs. One were the Arabs of the Middle East, and secondly, the Khazarian Empire to the north, white barbarians, next to the Mongolians who had ruthlessly ravaged almost all of Europe and the Orient, slaughtering people everywhere. And I think Genghis Khan said that God wanted him to punish the human race. So there's been this seething desire to get a homeland back where it was in ancient times. And it seems to me from my research, a lot of vengeance has been playing out here, a lot of revenge. Whether it was the Armenians or the Russians after World War I with the Russian Revolution and other peoples. So I suspect the revenge is not over by a long shot. So with all that said, me with my research since 2005, making videos since 2013, so I'm completing about 4 years of making videos and up to series 170, so that's 170 authors. Some of those authors are 2 and 3 and 4 books, so about 200 books. So anyways, the age-old dilemma of Jews living in the diaspora. And they were dispersed all over the world for thousands of years, and they have been dreaming of returning to their homeland and in establishing another kingdom on earth, an empire controlling the planet. This is no small thing, I keep saying. And they seem to have a particular unique religion that causes them problems from living with everybody else. And during those few thousand years, many times they were accused of something called blood libel. They would sacrifice a human being and use the blood in some religious ceremonies, mixing it with bread for some kind of Passover or some kind of other satanic, demonic rituals. That's all I can call it. And again, I don't believe it was all Jews. Many Jews have been warning the rest of the world numerous times. Rabbi Marvin Antelman, leader of the United States Jewish Congress, in the book reviews I went over to eliminate the opate, your belief in God, your praying to God, the opate. PhD author Henry McCow in Canada, Illuminati, the cult that hijacked the world. So the Illuminati seems to be similar to the Kabbalah, which is also similar to the religion of the Freemasons, Rosicrucians, and all these other cults. And it seems to be involved with the ancient mysteries of the Egyptians, as well as the symbolism all over the world of some ancient beings in ancient times, and also some kind of interdimensional spiritual beings conjured up or communicated with by shamans whether for good purposes or bad. I'm not necessarily opposed to shamanism, but I suppose if they have some kind of magic that they can use to do certain things that we have no idea about, it might behoove us to be aware of it. I mean, how do you police a witch or a shaman or an Illuminati or the ancient Jews who were practicing Kabbalah and the Talmud and possibly sacrificing people and using the blood for their rituals, as they were accused of many, many times and found guilty in the court system and by peoples and villages and towns many, many times? Wheatcroft examines the eventful first 100 years of political Zionism. Zionism does exist. People will start giggling if you mention it, or give you nasty remarks on press releases if you mention it. It seems to be what's behind the New Age and the New World Order, part of this paradigm change. Apparently, I was thinking about this yesterday. So for 2,000+ years, admittedly, even in the Encyclopedia Judaica and many other books, the Jewish people, because of their particular religion, could not get along with the rest of us. Fair enough? True? They called it the Jewish problem. The world's most foremost problem, according to Henry Ford. I've gone over many books on this topic. Please go watch them. Or other people's books. Or go buy the books. So what's happening is, for these couple thousand years, where they had problems with the rest of the world accepting their religion and the things they were doing, and even being accused periodically of blood libel, sacrificing humans and using the blood for rituals, whatever, and a propensity for obtaining a lot of wealth and control and aberrant, highly different morality behavior. They call it vices, things they were into. And apparently, like Rabbi Marvin Antelman's book, The Sabbatins and Frankists, or like Aleister Crowley, using sexual magic, orgies and stuff, communicating with demons and beasts. I don't say this lightly. I've read a lot of books and made a lot of videos. I don't want to believe this any more than anybody else wants to. Now they got things on YouTube videos that say, and this just came out of nowhere in the last few days, the earth is slowing down and lots of activity, earthquakes are predicted. So a few weeks ago, months ago, they were bringing back Nibiru, Planet X, global warming, pole shifting. So it does seem to me there is some intentional fear-mongering, which I suspect does alter the way we think in society, causing people to make decisions, maybe be less proactive as they would be. So something sinister is going on behind the scenes with the dumping of chemicals in the sky and the increased electromagnetic pollution and high technologies coming online. It seems like we, the people, are in deep trouble. So anyways, back to this Zionist issue here with this book here, The Controversy of Zion. After centuries of persecution and contempt, European Jews were slowly emancipated in the 19th century. So during the 1800s, they were gaining more and more acceptance and freedoms. They were busy to do that. And apparently in the 1900s, they've been pretty much taking over the world. In 1913, December 21st, they took over the USA money supply and probably had taken over the money supplies and economic controls of many nations through bankruptcy and other things for the past 100 years. They are in control, as Prime Minister Sharon said in his famous speech, "Don't worry about America. We control America, and the Americans know it." So they were involved in this thing where they were dispersed and no homeland, called the diaspora. The last couple 100 years, they've been busy with Aliyah, causing all kinds of created artificial anti-Semitism to motivate the Jews to want to go back to Israel. You can't solve a problem if you don't have a problem. So they were creating a problem to bring about this fulfillment of some kind of prophecy involving this particular religion they're into, which seems to be fallen angels, demonic beings, magic, Kabbalah, Illuminati, witchcraft, sorcery. These are not my words. These are words that are in the Encyclopedia Judaica and many other books. So they were slowly being emancipated, gaining more rights and freedoms during the 1800s. This gave them a chance to become what they were never allowed to be before, loyal citizens of the countries where they lived. As the 19th century wore on, however, this emancipation proved to be an illusion. The hatred once based on religion made way for a new and more insidious form of anti-Semitism based on race and culture. So like I was saying earlier, their particular culture, their religion, for some reason inhibited them from getting along with everybody else. With this new age and new world order, gay agenda, transgenderism, and non-nationalities and things like that, apparently we people of the entire world will be forced into accepting their culture and their religion, which is the opposite of the Ten Commandments and Jesus' teachings, as well as other religion. So it seems like the world's going to be forced into a darker, evil religion. I'm saying that to make it simple. But it seems we all have to change to be like them. And apparently with the protocols of Zion and movies like The Hunger Games, they will be the aristocrats of the world because they deserve it. They're better than us. They have more genius than we do. We're dumber, I guess you could say. I mean, how else are you going to put it? It looks like the whole world has been exasperated trying to deal with these people. And not all Jewish people. A lot of Jewish people have written books and made famous speeches and trying to warn the rest of us. But it looks like the whole world is being deceived into accepting the dark religion of the fallen angels, which God cast out of heaven. And in Adam and Eve, when the snake tempted them and they ate of the tree of knowledge and ran and put some clothes on because they realized they were naked. And again, with the Hebrews, Jews, collecting all the gold, worshiping the golden calf with a drunken orgy while Moses was up on the mountain talking to God. Or when Jesus came, they rejected the religion of love and had him crucified. We are all going to be forced to join their program. And part of the prophecy is everybody will have to swear allegiance to Lucifer or be beheaded. And apparently, if you look up online, you can see where the U.S. government purchased 30,000 guillotines and much more evidence with many satanic rituals, even putting the Archway of Baal in New York and London. And later on through UNESCO, 1,000 of them all over the world. And Emmys and Grammys, Super Bowl halftime shows, tunnel openings, Eurovision in Europe, satanic rituals and symbolism that's just too clear to be denied. But it's one of those topics that people do not want to deal with or accept. And trust me, you'd had a hard time to get me to believe it if I hadn't have been reading these books and finding these books, having them in my hands and spending days and days and reading and weeks and months and years. So the hatred once based on religion made way for a new and more insidious form of anti-Semitism based on race and culture. The Jew was still a stranger. His position the more false and humiliating for his attempt to assimilate. So you could not assimilate Satanism with godliness or Christianity or any of the other religions. This was the Jewish question, to which at the end of the 19th century, a drastic solution was proposed. In 1896, Viennese journalist Theodor Herzl first coined the term Zionism for the movement to found a homeland where Jews could live free from these persecutions. So what I'm going to do is read from chapter 2. I'll put a little marker here. I've been reading and reading, as you can see. And I came across something that was just too clear and outstanding. I said, wow, this is what I have to read. This tells volumes. So I'm just going to read and throw in my comments. All right. See if I can start this out where it makes sense. This definition indeed fitted the bulk of the Jews living in East Europe like a glove. As Amos Oz put it, that great Jewry of many millions stretching from the Baltic to the Black Sea was in a way a true nation. So what bound or binded these people so thoroughly? And apparently, according to the Encyclopedia Judaica and many other books, it was a religion. So it begs the question, what is the religion? And apparently, according to the Encyclopedia Judaica, 1973 edition I have, it was the Kabbalah, and many Kabbalists were accused of sorcery, which I call witchcraft. Even if it may have had no government, army, or stamps, even if it lacked the trappings of a state, it was splendidly civilized, with a religion, law, and order, and systems of education and welfare, a language, civilized manners, lullabies, fairy stories, music, justice, literature, economics, policy, power struggles, intellectual movements, everything you could find in a more prosperous civilization also existed in that Eastern European Jewish shadow state. So in all these countries across Europe, there was a shadow state. It was no way inferior to normal nation states, and in some respects it was far superior to them, and indeed to the present state of Israel. So this author seems to be favoring the Jews, telling the truth, just like the Encyclopedia Judaica. But if you're reading it, sometimes some of the information, if you are intelligent and alert and use common sense, you've got to say, oh my, that's concerning. Despite the terrible poverty, no one ever starved to death, and there was not a man who could not at least read or write. There have been few normal states, either then or now, that could boast as much. So they were an organized group of people. That seems to be no doubt. They didn't want to socialize with everybody else. They lived in ghettos, and they practiced money laundering and other things. And many times, like I said, throughout history, they were accused of blood libel. And there was many other oddities. Some of the more elite of the Jews were doctors or magicians to kings and queens, and they were used as tax collectors and procurers of supplies for crusades and wars. They had their little niche businesses. Moving and accurate as this description is, the question remained whether the whole of Jewry was in this sense a nation, or whether it had even inseparably the makings of a former nation state, and whether nationalism on the burgeoning European pattern was an appropriate model for the Jewish people to emulate. So should they assimilate and emulate the rest of the society in all the different countries they lived in? And like I said, it seems like this new age and new world order, things that are being brought about now through deception, is the rest of the world is going to have to change over to their ways, and apparently they do believe they are the chosen ones, the aristocrats, and that they were put on earth to rule over mankind, to be like our masters. You think that's going to be very nice? It was also irrelevant to those who had left the ghetto. It was they who embodied the previous unknown Jewish anxieties and neuroses, they who wore the express of the new flowering, they who were to express the new flowering of the Jewish genius, they who were faced with a series of new questions. Who am I? Do I like what I am? Do I like myself? Am I a member of the Gentile nation among which I live, distinguished only by certain accidental characteristics? Or is there another people to which I really belong? Does a Jewish nation exist? And should I try to repudiate it and to identify with it? With the question of Jewish nationhood unresolved, others had speculated that migration to the Holy Land might serve some millenarian purpose. So, the New Age. The Jewish religion taught that the Messiah would come one day. So they still believe a Messiah will come one day. And apparently they prayed feverishly a couple thousand years ago. And apparently Jesus arrived on this scene and was the Messiah who was rejected. So they're now looking for a new one. And the one they wanted back then was a conqueror king who would slaughter all their enemies, which was everybody else. So if this new Messiah does come, will he be the conqueror king and slaughter of humanity, all their enemies that they never could live with? This isn't me speculating or just saying this or thinking this. This is written in these words, in these books, in Encyclopedia Judaica, and many other books, in the Bible. And if you pay attention to current events and activities, the satanic symbolisms and rituals and Emmys and Grammys and tunnel openings and holograms or whatever, images put on Empire State Building, Hoover Dam, the Illuminati card games. Do I have to really go on and on and on and on and on? It's all for all to see if you only want to look. The Jewish religion taught that the Messiah would come one day. No one could predict when, and as an act of divine grace to redeem his people. So for these thousands of years of suffering, the people need to be redeemed. Does that mean the rest of us all over the world need to be punished and or destroyed? As pious Christian like Ashley had, of course, a contrary belief that the Messiah had already redeemed mankind. And philo-Semitism was logically despite rather than consequent of that belief. Logically also, some Jewish notions of return were at variance with strict rabbinical teachings. Yehuda Elkaili was born in Sarajevo in 1798, but spent his boyhood in Jerusalem and returned to serve as rabbi in Semlin in Serbia. In 1834, he published a little book, Hear, O Israel, proposing the recolonization of the Holy Land as a precondition of the redemption. So the redemption, redeeming the Jews, maybe getting revenge and slaughtering all of mankind, like when God gave the Jews, so it is said, the land of Canaan, they were instructed to go in there and kill all the citizens. That's what that God they had told them to do. So now if they can get this homeland in Israel It's a precondition of the redemption. And will this God Messiah that they're anticipating lead them to destroy all we the people on the planet and gain their vengeance and revenge? And would that be why there's so much activity going on with high technological, biological, electromagnetic weaponries and propaganda in the news and terrorism and legislation? Why there seems to be an attack on humanity. And now with the YouTube videos saying the earth is slowing down and going to be causing more earthquakes, and we know they have HARP transmitters and sonic pulse directed energy beam weapons. The people who run our world behind the scenes, the secret societies, have these weapons. And they have been obsessed with overpopulation, which I just think is an excuse, like biodiversity and sustainability and global warming, so they can blame it on the acts of God when something bad happens and kills millions, maybe billions of people, like a pole shift. What is the truth? Strictly speaking, this is page 40 on this book. This was an impetus suggestion from a rabbi. So 1834, they proposed a recolonization of the Holy Land as a precondition of redemption. Pure Torah Judaism had to some extent been clouded by other mystical and Kabbalistic teachings, sorcery, witchcraft. Remember, a lot of people are listening to all these mediums and channelers and psychics report to us. You can go watch the videos on YouTube or go see the lectures or buy the books. But all this information being channeled, and then a lot of citizens all over the world are listening to this channeled material and maybe believing it. Are we being deceived? And here it says Torah Judaism had to some extent been clouded by other mystical and Kabbalistic traditions, and many of the Kabbalistic practitioners were accused of sorcery, and a lot of these Jewish people throughout history were magicians and doctors for kings and queens and other elites. So there is something to these mystery religions. The things that they, like the Freemasons, they swear under threat of death not to divulge these secrets to the rest of us, and they call us profane, where the Jews, not all Jews, call us goy or goyim, which means cattle. So other mystery and Kabbalistic teachings and alkali seems to have been influenced by these with vague notions of the forerunner to the Messiah, as John the Baptist is to the Christians, who would lead the Jews. Hear me now. I'm not speculating. I'm reading from page 41, the very first line. Who would lead the Jews in the war of Gog and Magog and reconquer the Holy Land. So we Christians, they rejected Christian Jesus and had him crucified. So are we of the rest of the world, Gog and Magog, and they are reconquering the Holy Land, and this Messiah is going to lead them in war against us. And of course, a lot of people are prophesizing that an Antichrist is coming in the Christian religion. So would their God be the Antichrist? Is that a fair question? Then, like so many others, alkali was revolutionized by the Damascus affair. So I did go look up the Damascus affair. It mentions it many times here. But apparently in the late 1800s, in Damascus, a monk and his assistant were abducted and apparently killed. And there was accusations of a blood libel, killing them in a satanic blood ritual. So it wound up being a big uproar that spread all over Europe and the Middle East, called the Damascus affair. Another incidence of accusations of blood libel. And I just read the sentence earlier that they were into this mysticism and Kabbalistic traditions, and they're expecting a Messiah who is going to lead the Jews in a war of Gog and Magog and reconquer the Holy Land. It explains World War I, World War II, and 9/11. As the material in this book will further provide evidence. This author was a well-educated man and doesn't seem to be trying to really insult the Jewish people too much. He's giving factual history, as far as I can see. I don't think this book is a negative Jewish book. It seems like it's trying to justify why the Jews should have a homeland back in the Holy Land. And it even goes on many times to say that they are geniuses and they've done many things better than anybody else. So when you consider that source and thinking, it certainly is worth reading. Then, like so many others, Alkali was revolutionized by the Damascus affair. The accusation of blood libel in Damascus, which is in Syria, which explains why Syria is under siege right now, has been being attacked for the last 10 years, so it seems, and utterly bombed and destroyed. Another case of vengeance, I see, just like the Russian Revolution in 1917 after World War I, where many of the Jews were fleeing because they didn't have the freedoms they wanted. They were being policed. Why? Maybe it was their Kabbalistic mysticism religion. Anyways, apparently Russia suffered revenge. Germany was the homeland. They were treated good in Germany, the Jewish people. They even prospered like never before. They had found their Garden of Eden. But Germany was sacrificed viciously. Another case of revenge or hatred. United States will probably be sacrificed. According to my research, the whole world, well, look what it says here. They're waiting on a Messiah to lead the Jews in a war of Gog and Magog and reconquer the Holy Land. They have nuclear weapons and they have control over the world, as Prime Minister Sharon said of Israel. Don't worry about America. We control America, and the Americans know it. They probably control Europe. I'm just saying, and they're bringing the whole world this liberal progressive socialism, which is a key disguised keywords for communism. And communism is like communes, which means people are going to be treated like cattle. And they call us goy and goyim, not all Jews. A lot of Jews still believe in God and that Jesus was the Messiah, and they have been trying to warn us for quite a while. I've made book reviews on many of the books. I've got many books left to go over. So, revolutionized his thinking because of the Damascus affair. This convinced him of something else, that what the Jewish people immediately needed was security and freedom, which they could only find if they took their destiny into their own hands. Well, I'll tell you right now, we free people of the world better get up and start working at taking our destiny in our hands. Once they turn the 5G network on, or they decide to dump something more sinister in that sky material they're dumping, or whatever, or an EMP, or fake a nuclear explosion, economic collapse, whatever, maybe we'll never have a chance to recover. This would not be long promised. This would not the long, sometimes these sentences, this would be not the long promised messianic redemption, the Messiah redemption, but self-redemption through their own efforts. So apparently they're not going to wait on this spiritual entity Messiah. They're taking the plan through their own efforts. In the third redemption, in 1843, so this is the third redemption for the Jews. strike three, you're out maybe. He argued that we as a people are properly called Israel only in the land of Israel. So this goes back to 1843. So if you've been watching my videos or doing any research, this thing has been going on for quite a while. Thousands of years, the Jews, they say they were persecuted, but there was reactionary behavior, and everywhere they went, at first they were welcomed. They had to earn the position of being persecuted and disliked. What did they do to cause that? The Jews should slowly return. The land must, by degrees, be built up and prepared to Palestine. So here it is in this book. It's been going on quite a while. Nothing started yesterday. And they're not about to cease and desist. I believe that immensely. I can see what's going on in the world every day these days. The immigrants would be the poor at first, helped by the many Jews who remained in the dispersion. So a lot of the elite Jews who had risen to high positions of power through whatever methods they did it, were using that positions of power and money to assist shipping poor people to Palestine, slowly buying up land and building their base. Since 1843 and earlier. The new assembly of elders would be chosen by our greater magnates. So these magnates like the Rothschilds, all these wealthy elite Jewish people worldwide, would be chosen as the assembly of elders to help the Jews regain their spiritual strength. We have certain bad habits among us, and there are forces which are weakening our religion. As for the settlement, get this. The Sultan will not object, for His Majesty knows that the Jews are his loyal subjects. So in this book at that time, they didn't think the Sultan, the Ottoman Empire in Turkey, the Turks, that ruled the entire Middle East, would object to their loyal subjects, the Jews, moving and immigrating and building bigger colonies in the land of Palestine and trying to rebuild King Solomon's temple for the third time after being destroyed 2 times and being dispersed all over the world almost 4,000 years and having trouble wherever they went. You need to put this stuff into context because these are the people who are going to be ruling and controlling our world. And they're not happy having had to suffer 4,000 years of persecution. There will be a price to pay for all of the people on the planet. So it seems. I'm using my common sense. What do you think? Am I exaggerating here? Differences of religion should not be an obstacle. And I did disagree. If some people are worshiping Satan, that's an obstacle for Christians going to heaven or hell. I mean, we shouldn't have to join these other Satanists with the fallen angels in hell. Just because 1/3 of the angels, according to the Bible, were cast out, doesn't mean the rest of us should join them and be cast out. Is there some kind of cosmic battle going on? Again, I'm using my logical thinking here. Differences of religion should not be an obstacle, for each nation will worship its own God and will forever obey the Lord our God. Another rabbi, Zevi Hirsch Kalischer, born in 1795 in a newly acquired Persian territory of Posen, so that would be up there around Iran, addressed the same subject. In 1836, he besought the help of the Berlin Rothschilds. In 1836, he besought the help of the Berlin Rothschilds, according to Fritz Springmeier in his book, Bloodlines of the Illuminati, the secret cult into this satanic religion where they do sacrifice people, and apparently involves reptilian beings. As crazy as it seems, go read David Icke's books or many other books, or even reports by many people on YouTube. The serpent being was in the Garden of Eden. Apparently there is some beings, serpent beings, and some religion called the Illuminati, and the derivatives, all the other secret societies. So they besought the help of Berlin Rothschilds to gather the scattered of Israel into the Holy Land. In 1860, a doctor called Haile Laurie organized a society at Frankfurt on the order to promote Jewish settlements in the Holy Land. So you're talking 50 years prior to World War I. World War I did not accomplish the goal of destroying the Ottoman Empire and getting the world to agree that the Jews could settle there. So World War II was required. And it seems like to finish the job, as Freemason leader Albert Pike said in the 1880s, 3 world wars would be required to bring about the new age and the new world order. And it does involve a particular religion and a particular God that apparently is not the same one of the peoples of the rest of the world, and apparently involves some kind of reptilian beings, as per Fritz Springmeier's book and David Icke's book and many other people's books, and the propaganda on aliens and UFOs. So what are these beings that can pop in and out of our reality? Or maybe live underground, or live hidden in different places around the planet? Alright, so they were getting with the Baron Rothschilds to help them get the poor people to the Holy Land in Israel. In 1860, a doctor called Haile Laurie organized a society at Frankfurt on the order to promote Jewish settlement in the Holy Land. Kalischer joined this group and in 1862 published Seeking Zion, making the case for the colonization. So now you know why they did 9/11, World War I, World War II. There's plenty of evidence. I've gone over it. Without such a settlement, how can the ingathering begin? How can the ingathering begin? These settlements would be farms and vineyards, one of the first hints of what was to become of such an important Zionist theme, the healing virtue of physical labor and rural life. Very few Jews in the dispersion lived directly on the land, but Jewish farmers would be a spur to the ultimate messianic redemption. So they got a Messiah redemption. And once they earn their way, go back to Israel, farm the land, had to kill all the natives and destroy all the Palestinian people's lands and property. Once they accomplish that, they are thinking the Messiah is going to come and help them destroy all their enemies all over the world, a messianic redemption. They rejected Jesus, who was preaching love. Not only that, but working the land would also raise our dignity among the nations, for they would say that the children of Israel, too, will have the will to redeem the land of their ancestors, which is now so barren and forsaken, a remarkably accurate prediction of how attitudes to the Jews would one day change. So if the Jews want to repossess the land that they took from the people who lived there in the land of Canaan, they destroyed and murdered everybody. What if those people rose back up and wanted to repossess the land from them? Well, what if after the Jews become successful in the Middle East, the Arabs want to rise up and repossess the land? Where does this end? And how many of our leaders have been complicit in creating this huge problem with Israel which now has nuclear weapons? Apparently, we have financed and supported the peoples who want to destroy the rest of us because of plus or minus 4,000 years of persecution and suffering. And apparently, according to Jesus, he said, "Ye are the seed of the serpent." You can't make this up. And I'm not trying to say these things because I have some hatred towards Jewish people. I pray for people all over the planet to wake up. I believe what Jesus taught, or even Moses, who was a Hebrew, coming down the mountain with the 2 tablets, the 10 commandments. I'm for them. I believe in Jesus. Jesus was a Hebrew, a Jewish person. So if God would send the Messiah for the world through Jesus, a Jew, and I believe in that, how can I be hating Jewish people? But they don't want you to use common sense. They don't want us to use common sense. And people are so narrow-minded and short-sighted and don't want to take the time to think and see it through. They're allowing themselves to be deceived, so it seems. And it doesn't sound like it's going to be too good. This was read by others, especially by one man who saw the question with new penetration. Of all the remarkable generation of the German Jews, listen up here what I'm about to read. Of all the remarkable generation of German Jews which flourished between 1820 and 1850. Like I said, they were fleeing Russia. They were flourishing in Germany. They were not treated bad. Germany did not deserve to be, for the Jews to turn traitor on them, betray them during World War I. But there was a bigger game afoot. You cannot leave out the spiritual component of a satanic, demonic God and a religion of people who follow that. You don't want to think about it, and I don't blame anybody. But it is what it is. I've gone over enough books. It's taken me a long time to try to figure out some of it. It's just a little bit unbelievable. People don't even want to believe in God or believe that Jesus really lived. Never mind history. All right, so it says here, so they were flourishing. So they were fleeing Russia, thriving in Germany prior to World War I, is my notes here. Moses, Hess, was the least regarded then and is the least known now. But it was he who grasped the truth about the Jewish question, which Hein and Marx, Karl Marx, had missed. Like them, Hess came from the Rhineland. He was born in 1812 in Bonn, ancient seat of the Elector Archbishops of Cologne, and later to be the capital of the Federal German Republic. Like others, the Hess family experienced the manic joy of emancipation. So there was a sort of emancipation, like the black people in the United States gaining their freedom. After the Civil War, they were emancipated. So apparently they found safe haven and prosperous opportunity in Germany, and there was a manic joy of emancipation, followed by profound depression after the Restoration. Unlike the others, Hess's father did not convert. He went off to run his business in Cologne, leaving the small boy with Moritz. Get this, what I'm about to tell you. With his grandfather, a pious old man who taught his grandson the Bible and the Talmud, and whose tears, as he described the destruction of the temple of King Solomon. And so little boy Hess remembered this in his later lifetime. His grandfather crying about the destruction of the temple of Solomon and the stuff in the Bible and the Talmud. So this is seriously a religion where some people are very serious about. And of course, you or I or nobody in modern times had anything to do with the first destruction of King Solomon's temple or the second destruction of King Solomon's temple. Heck, the United States wasn't even discovered. But it seems the world is going to pay a price. And if will the Jews be conquered again and punished after they gain their empire and start destroying the world? Could all this be avoided? Thought I would just take a moment here and look at some pictures. So apparently there's plans for a greater Israel. They never planned to just have that little sliver of land called Palestine. And it does entail the land of Syria, some of Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, as you can see, called Greater Israel. When they first obtained some of the land back in 1948, where my finger is, they had some small little bluish portions over here. And then they gained more in the middle, and here's where we are today. The Palestinians have very little left. And apparently since 9/11, all those other countries have been overthrown. And for whatever reason, these pictures I'm just showing you are in the stack. I have not previewed them today. Just a stack of pictures. So I'm looking at them, interpreting them. And this is the night of the East and West, the 17th degree in Freemasonry. Has something to do with the Kabbalistic religion. Look at that entity with the triangle on his head. You can go look up the Freemasonic symbols on Yahoo image site, or go get the Morals and Dogma at a used bookstore. President George Bush Jr. on the Wailing Wall. A lot of these people that we all know publicly are secretly Jewish people, belong to these secret societies. Why would George Bush be doing that on the Wailing Wall? And apparently there's a lot of historical evidence that these people want to take over the world. Other people's renderings and drawings. There's an octopus with the world. Another picture of the Greater Israel. You can see Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Israel, Egypt. No small thing. They got nuclear weapons. And they plan on taking the whole world, according to what I know. So apparently this wall is one of the sides of King Solomon's temple. The Wailing Wall. And you can see those people on the bottom by the wall. They are there every day praying. We want to be redeemed. We want to destroy all of our enemies. Please come, Messiah. Is that what they're saying? That's what it says in the book. Is this what it looks like? They want to rebuild this. Of course, Henry Ford's book, I've been going over his. The Dearborn Independent, the International Jew, the World's Problem. I'm not making this up. Apparently they control the White House, Zionist, the political action committees, the Anti-Defamation League, all kinds of organizations. A lot of people know this. Apparently over in Palestine, they're using phosphorus, raining molten lava on the people. Can you even imagine, should people who do that rule the world? Think about it. Zionist New World Order. I'm not making this stuff up. Forget the Christmas tree. Now they have the menorah in the White House. And even in a big shopping store last Christmas, I've showed that in previous videos, they had these menorahs when I walked into the big major store. I don't want to name the name of the store. We all go there. And they had a big menorah, Happy Holidays. It wasn't Merry Christmas or a Christmas tree. Winston Churchill was supporting of them. So they've been promoting the world for support for a long time. Meanwhile, they're dropping phosphorus on the Palestinians. And since 9/11, which seems to have had some support by Mossad, the Israeli intelligence service, and a lot of elites, wealthy people, a picture says a lot. This whole program is taking us over the cliff. And like I said before, a lot of Jewish people are opposed to this Zionist world domination plan. A lot of Jewish people are fighting it. Zionism causes global anti-Semitism. More Jews. If you go look up Zionism on Yahoo image site, you'll see these pictures. You'll see the link to these pictures. It'll take you to the website and tell you the story. Zionism, and apparently the religion is satanic. So what do you think? Should we allow the satanic forces to take over the world? Has this been a battle going on for thousands of years? Apparently, that's one of Obama's mentors and advisors on the far picture there. And apparently he was a dual citizen with Israel. And him or his brother fought in the Israeli army during one of their wars. These people have taken over our government, as Prime Minister Sharon said. Look up what Benjamin Netanyahu said in Fink's Bar. Who are these people with this Kabbalah religion? Why do some Jews, who I guess worship God still, believe in God, why are they fighting Zionism? Crazy pictures if you go look up Zionism and images on the Yahoo image site. Will it be rest in peace Americans, rest in peace Europeans, rest in peace Russians, rest in peace Australians and French and Italians and Brazilians and people all over the world? Will it? They're taking down countries. I didn't make these pictures. I've been doing my research. They plan on a new age and a new world order. They control the banking system, the economic system, the education system, our politicians. They're behind the terrorism, biodiversity, sustainability, Agenda 21, directed energy weapon, dumping chemicals in the sky. Who controls our world right now? This Jew says the end of Zionism equals peace. Zionism is world domination. All right, I have one more batch here. And of course, they want everybody to shut up and not talk about this. Is this our world? Brought to you by the Zionist Illuminati secret societies, bringing us all the demonic and satanic rituals and symbols. The other picture I want to bring, and I can't emphasize it enough, it's very important. But there's been this program for more than 100 years called Aliyah. I read in the book about the diaspora. So for 2,000, almost 4,000 years, the Jews were forced from their homeland. Apparently an act of God, by the way. They broke God's commandments, according to the biblical stories, and prophesied for this resurgence, and timely, apparently during a time of a return of the Antichrist. But for the last 100 years, before World War I, even in the 1800s, they've been causing intentional anti-Semitism, disturbances, hatred for the Jews. Intentionally. The people living in those communities really could care less. But they needed those Jews to move to Palestine. They didn't want to move. They wanted to stay in Philadelphia, in Berlin, in France, in Britain. But you just stir up a little economic upheaval, blame it on the Jews, and get hatred going. You can motivate people to leave, can't you? So they've been going. You can go on Yahoo image site and look up Aliyah, and you'll see they have special planes and bringing in people. These children will grow up to be warriors. All Israelis are required to serve in the military. It's been going on quite a while. Huge celebrations, the leaders and everything. Back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, look at the picture. Look at the patriotism that's been installed in these people. They have a fever for this religious thing they're doing. Make no mistake about it. Prime Minister Ariel Sharon, the one that says, "Don't worry about America, we control America," greets immigrants from France upon their arrival at Tel Aviv's Ben Gurion Airport. Sharon also paid tribute to the French President Jacques Chirac's efforts to combat anti-Semitism. There's Sharon right there. So is there really anti-Semitism? Or maybe there is awareness of the whole world is being changed intentionally. 911, terrorist acts, threats of global warming. See the Jewish symbol on that plane? Lots of family pictures, people coming from all over the world, arriving in Israel to immigrate there. All you have to do is be Jewish, and you too can go to this place and be considered one of the God's chosen children and the geniuses of the world, destined to be the aristocrats of the world. And everybody else, according to when the Messiah comes, Gog and Magog will be destroyed by their Messiah's leadership. Aliyah, here's how you spell it. This is no small thing. It's a world revolution. Imagine their mindset. Imagine the marketing. You'd think you're going on a cruise. It's Christmas. It's a holiday. It's Aliyah. And the rest of the world have been persecuting you and your people for thousands of years. Time for revenge, maybe. You think I want to say this stuff? And they promote true love. Young girl's going to find her future husband. Aliyah. Lots of things can happen. Whole families leaving New York City, New Jersey, and other places, Argentina, returning home after thousands of years. These people don't look brown, do you? Do you think so? Aren't they kind of white? I guess they would be Khazarian descendants. Told you they're serious. Sometimes you don't need to speak. Yahoo image site, look up Aliyah, click the picture. It'll tell you the story. 200 years. This has been a fever on the minds of people who could not get along with others. For what reason? Let me ask a question. Should we, the people of the world, want to destroy all the Jews? What do you think? My answer is no. Absolutely not. We are to love one another, what Jesus taught. Now, let me turn around that question. Do the Jews want to be redeemed and a Messiah come to destroy all the rest of us? And of course, not all Jews. But the answer is, that's what it seems like. And they brainwash these kids. You think they're taught to love us? To treat us fairly? Welcome to Israel. You can't make this stuff up. So while the rest of the world is suffering terror attacks and economic repression and growth, sucking a couple billion out of the United States alone every year, some people are benefiting. Well, I don't see anything else here I really want to show. One more older picture. Other than the fact that the stuff is real, and I think education is a smart thing. I think hatred is a bad thing. I believe in God, so I think prayer is a good thing. And we are to pray for peace and some kind of resolution to this problem. But I don't think the one that's in play right now with the planning of the New Age, New World Order, and all these other satanic demonic rituals and everything. The Archway of Baal in New York, London, thousand of them elsewhere. Portals to allow demonic beings to come into this world, or what? CERN, the satanic rituals at the Swiss Alps tunnel opening, the Eurovision singing contest in Europe, where Conchita Wurst wins, half man, half woman, singing the song Phoenix Rising with the words "You Can't Stop Us." Katy Perry, Beyonce, Lady Gaga, all these other movie star people doing symbols like this, and the 3 6s, and the goat symbol, even our politicians, the horned goat, the triangles. What is it going to take for people to wake up? That this is not just about humans versus humans, and for some strange reason they just don't get along. It's something deeper, and it's in the books I've gone over. It is a religious culture. And apparently there's going to be a winner and a loser. And apparently at this point it looks like the Christian reality, world we know, it is about to be destroyed, and all the people are going to be convinced to be over with the liberal progressives, gay agenda, transgenderism world. All the bad people created the pollution on the planet. We did it. When in reality it was the elites who did it, and they're part of the secret societies, and they've been raking in billions and trillions, fleecing it from the rest of us, crashing the economic system 8 or 9 times since 1913 when they took over the USA money supply, after not having control of it for 30 or 40 years, and having killed a couple presidents, poisoned some presidents, when they were trying to regain control over the USA money supply, having a hand apparently in the Civil War, per General Ulysses Grant, according to the Encyclopedia Judaica, during the Civil War, banished all the Jewish people from the Tennessee, Kentucky, and Missouri territories. Why? During the 1800s, why did they lose control of the USA money supply? And how did they get it back? So I'm going to read from the book some more. And I'm just trying to have a conversation and say clearly, in my opinion, this whole issue is no small issue. We have a problem. You can get this book online, used bookstore, news bookstore. Maybe it's in PDF, I don't know. Let me read a little bit more from it. So, Hess grew up with his grandfather teaching him about the Bible, the Talmud, and with tears in his eyes about the destruction of King Solomon's temple. The ancient times when Israel had a kingdom. He was caught up first by the wave of patriotic fever. Imagine growing up during the 1800s in Europe and you were Jewish. And they had the Damascus affair, where some people were, Jewish people were accused of another case of blood libel. He was caught up with the wave of patriotic fever sweeping Germany, subsequently in exile by another tide of enthusiasm for the brand of extreme revolutionary socialism already known as communism. So communism was alive and well during the middle and late 1800s, like the French Revolution. These people were causing these revolutions. They were revolutionaries. They were inciting the working class people against the business owners, the wealthy. And I guess if you told all the poor people you were going to help them get more money and be more successful, you would probably get a lot of those people to join your side. But was that why they really had the revolutions? And according to the material I've been reading in this book here and others, the answer was absolutely not. They weren't doing it for the people. You get a lot of power and prestige by being a leader of a revolutionary group. People think you're a hero. They treat you like a hero. Women love you. Lots of money, alcohol, drugs. This was the doctrine once preached by the violent French revolutionary Baroff, that society could only be properly transformed by an absolute equality of all, which would follow the complete abolition of private property. We all know they're preaching globalism now, and they're preaching it strong, and a lot of people are buying it. Even in 2017, this program is underway. So back then, this one French revolutionary Barbert, that society could only be properly transformed by the absolute equality of which would follow the complete abolition of private property. Communist socialism had been rekindled in the turbulent years after Waterloo, along with new strains of nationalism and romanticism. So these revolutionary movements were very sentimental, and a lot of people would take sides, and there was a lot of fighting, and apparently a lot of looting and murder. In contrast to La Salle, Hess, at any rate, preached what he practiced. He spent a life of destitution, self-abasement, and of quixotry, such as characteristically marrying a prostitute in order to rescue her, a Gentile girl with whom he lived with happily ever after. So I am aware that part of the Zivi Sabbatai religion in Rabbi Marvin Antelman's book, where they do have a set of commandments opposite to the Ten Commandments, part of their religion, the Frankish Sabbatans, were to marry prostitutes. They were quite liberal in those activities. Now, I want to be submerging, saying bad things about all of them, but that's what's in the books. And apparently it was the Jewish people who were the sponsors behind the swingers organizations and are largely behind the porn industry, publishing industry, and even Hollywood. They have a book called An Empire of Their Own, and we all see the quality of the TV programming coming out now. So they have a different set of moral beliefs than the rest of us, and not all Jews. Hess became a comrade of Karl Marx and Engels, but they soon turned on him. He became an object of their deepest contempt, and in what maybe have been the first example of Marxist rewriting of history. So they have rewritten history, and they're trying to rewrite history now. His contribution to the development of their policy was suppressed. This fact was that Hess made communism, he made communist of both Engels and Marx. Sometimes I get worn out of speaking. He met his hero, the only true philosopher now alive, Dr. Marx. That is the name of my idol. In August 1841, after which Marx drew on and even plagiarized Hess. So Marx, one of the leaders of communism, was plagiarizing Hess. It was this meeting which pushed Marx towards pure socialist collectivism, something Engels admitted in an article in an obscure journal in 1843, though Marx had turned on Hess contemptuously as a feeble echo of French socialism and communism with a slight philosophical flavor. Even with Marx's indebtedness, there remained indeed a great difference between them. Although extreme, Hess's own socialism was radically different from Marx's. Hess did not construct a scientific framework. He did not believe that men were driven inexorably by great impersonal forces. He did not think that class conflict was either inevitable or desirable. Hegelian historicism had evidently not struck so deep in him after all. In other words, Hess's socialism was unashamedly ethical rather than scientific. For that reason, Marx and his henchmen sneered at the Rosewater socialism preached by Rabbi Hess. For that reason also, Hess's theses have been falsified in their own terms as Marx's have. And in certain specific ways, Hess has proved a better prophet than Marx. Not that is saying much. Sometimes when you read somebody else's words, the sequence are just a little bit tongue-tying. Hess had not so much psychologically forsworn his Jewish heritage as have been looking for outlets for that inheritance. He then found his awakening, the truly Damascene conversion. He too heard about the Damascus incident in 1840, where some Jews were accused of a blood libel, sacrificing a human being for the blood, and was shocked and, as he later said, began to wonder whether the abolition of private property and the universal egalitarian society, which was to follow, would in fact solve all of the ills of humanity. So were there some Jewish people back then really trying to work towards change humanity so it would be equal for all? I made some videos. I would suggest people go look up online the Protocols of Zion. And it's free PDF. I'm sure you can find it. And then the other book I made a video on, The Jewish Utopia. One of my series. What number is that? I made 3 2-hour videos on this book. Robert Williams was a retired intelligence officer for the U.S. government. That's no small thing. Anyways, he discovered in a Texas library a book trying to find a picture here for you. The Jewish Utopia. (1932) Details what these people think of themselves and the rest of us. How they're going to take over the world and what they're going to do. By a USA retired intelligence officer who started a magazine, and then he found that book, and I made 3 2-hour videos. You can go look it up online, find your own source material. So back to this book. Just some background about what we're dealing with. The stuff is real. In particular, he began to wonder whether socialism would end the afflictions of his own people. A slap across one cheek when he heard about the Damascus affair was followed by one across the other in the following year. So this is before World War I and World War II in the 1900s. This crazy stuff was going on in the 1800s. Hess was still enough of a German patriot to be caught up in the hostility to France, then sweeping Germany. So before 1900 ever rolled around, there were hostility between France and Germany. And he was thrilled by the Francophobic poem he read, so some poem that was anti-Frankist, French, written by a poet called Becker. So excited that he set it to music and sent it in the post for his approval. So he liked this poem that Becker wrote, so Hess set it to music and sent it to this guy. Becker replied with an icily polite letter, sent in an envelope. On the back was written in the hand where he had barely tried to disguise, "You are a Yid or a Kike." I guess those are derogatory names for Jewish people. Yid being Yiddish. So great consequences follow from trivial causes. In the psychopathology of everyday life, so I suppose that's some kind of book or essay, the psychopathology of everyday life, Freud, the psychiatrist, describes how he discovered the Freudian slip when he fell into conversation on a train with another younger Austrian Jew. So Freudian slips are when you're talking about something and something you say slips out and it tells something about you. So Freud was talking to this younger Austrian Jew. In the course of railing against the anti-Semitism prevalent in that country, the young man tried to emphasize his argument with a quotation from Virgil, but misquoted it in a way which was unintentionally revealing. A discovery of similar magnitude came to Hess. He was not immediately transformed by Beck's insults. He tried to master his feelings about Becker as he also about the Damascus affair. So Hess was not happy with Becker's reply to his setting music to Becker's poem. For the time being, he still clove to the socialist line that mankind was family, that racial prejudice and persecution were morbid symptoms of a diseased and dying society, that the struggle of the proletariat, the working man, was more important than any sectarian or national interest, and that the best thing the Jews could do would be to disappear, not merely by assimilation, but by the disappearance of their religion and their complete absorption into the Gentile communities. All of this had been said before, and it would be said again half a century later before his own conversion to Jewish nationalism. Theodor Hirsch would propose the mass baptism of the Austrian Jews as a solution to the Jewish problem. So a leading Jewish man, journalist, recognizes the problem, and he suggests that all the Jews get baptized to solve the Jewish problem before 1900 ever came along. So if there's any really big point I'm trying to make here in this video, is that this problem goes back a long ways. There's a fundamental cause behind it that's not mentioned too much in this book. But there is a religious culture that's different than the rest of us. And it appears that we're all spiritual beings, some either guided by Jesus and God, and some guided by fallen angels or beings or demons or Lucifer, Satan, whatever. Can that be the case? And I realize it's a lot to deal with mentally. But even the Jewish authors, like Rabbi Marvin Antelman, leader for the U.S. Jewish Congress, says just that. There is an argument in the Jewish world between Orthodox Jewry and Reformed Jewry, where the Jews don't want to follow God's commandments and have a propensity for a more different kind of morality and vices, and apparently want to bring all that morality and vices to the rest of the world. We need to switch from being Christians over to the devil's pleasure, just paraphrasing there, trying to show that what they want the rest of the world is to join them instead of them joining the rest of the world. And even Jesus, throwing over the money changers' tables, said, ye are of your father the serpent, or ye are the killers of your prophets. It's a complicated issue, but it is an issue that's real, and it's alive and well and at work today for this pursuit of a new age and new world order called globalism, where the rest of us are all going to be assimilated into an obedient, monitored, spied on, and probably depopulated group of people, while over in Israel it'll be a nationalistic, patriotic country and be the aristocrats ruling the world. So it seems from my research. Karl Kraus would insist that social democracy was the answer. Even after Hitler, Isaac Dotcher could still say he wished the Jews had survived, but that Jewry had vanished. And a lot of this material leaves out the secret societies that were busy at work back then. And the Rothschilds were called upon, even in this book, I've been reading it, and there's more in it on this issue. And all the other magnates, wealthy Jews all over the world, were working behind the scenes and controlling and had great influence with political leaders worldwide. They were sneaking millions of poor people, Jews over there, buying up Palestinian lands, probably killing Palestinian people, causing problems in Iraq and many other countries all over the world to create a tumultuous situation that would scare the Jews so that they would cooperate and move to Israel. Some of them were paid up to $20,000, as I've learned in some of my research. It's no small thing. The diaspora for thousands of years, the return home as prophesied, the Aliyah program. It's all under the guise of Zionism ruling the world from Mount Zion, Jerusalem, and Tel Aviv. The implications are just crazy. In the 1840s, Hess remained a communist. Even after his hero turned on him, Hess remained loyal to Marx and Lassalle, the head of the Goth on Jewish shoulders, who befriended him. He remained unsympathetic to most forms of nationalism. So these revolutionary Jewish people are unsympathetic to most forms of nationalism. Now you know why they don't want nationalism in the United States. Now you know why they want to disarm the people in the United States. Nationalism, it has to go. This policing world order government, globalism, is supposed to take control. At least those which were allied with the forces of reaction. But one movement caught his imagination. The Italians were a people struggling rightly to be free, united in their determination to throw off the despotic yokes of the Habsburgs, the popes, and the Bourbons, who divided the country between them. Like I said when I started this video, this is a conversation, this video. And I've been reading this book. But a conversation I think we all need to have to understand the problem, a problem that's been called the Jewish problem, the world's foremost problem, for hundreds, if not thousands of years. It's been acknowledged. And apparently if you talk about it, you're an anti-Semitism, anti-Semite. But in the United Nations or in the secret halls of Congress or the state legislators or the House of Representatives or the presidency, even the Supreme Court, you have a couple people that are Jewish. Things are being discussed. Decisions are being made about our reality. Maybe they've made a decision to depopulate the planet. Maybe they've made a decision to bring about this new kind of control. Globalism, policing people. They're making decisions about our lives. And maybe it's even about opposite of what we believe in religion as a religious people, Christianity. and even for the Arabs, the Muslims. And according to Aleister Crowley, the satanic forces are not happy with the Buddhists and Hindus. So the peoples all over the world are potential victims of some kind of demonic beings which are worshipped by certain peoples. I know it's crazy to say. The Jews, page 45, are more than merely a people. They must take their place as a nation among nations. They must resume life in their own land on the banks of the Jordan. Remember, they've been dispersed from there most of the time since they were given that land 3,700 years ago, almost 4,000 years ago. And these people now have nuclear weapons. More than 60 years after Napoleon's appeal to the Jews, Hess says that France will take up her Napoleonic role as liberator of peoples and help the Jews to find a home again in the Holy Land. Now remember, the secret societies control our world. Make no mistake about it. Rosicrucians, Freemasons, Illuminati, Knights of Malta, Knights of Columbus, Bohemian Grove, Bilderberger groups, Club of Rome, and so many more. Jesuits, Zionists. It's a force to be reckoned with. This might seem like daydreaming, and early Zionist projects were plainly fanciful, dealing with states of mind rather than nation states. Hess was more practical than that. He looked to France as an ally, not only because of the memories of Napoleon, but because under the great Napoleon's less great nephew, Napoleon III, France had been a fertile ground for speculation about a new Jewish homeland. 2 years before Hess, Joseph Salvador had published Paris, Rome, Jerusalem, The Question About Religion, a characteristic mid-19th century, so in the 1800s, of political, philosophical speculation, not to say fantasy. Although Salvador was part Jewish, he was dealing principally with the destiny of Europe and America. He was dealing principally with the destiny of America and Europe. Now remember, Prime Minister Sharon of Israel did say in a heated argument in his Congress in Israel, "Don't worry about America, we control America, and the Americans know it." And as a byproduct of his rumination, he advocated the creation of a new state in the Holy Land. They call it the Holy Land, which should be populated by Jews despite what he considered as their degraded condition. And Ernest Labarine had published La Nouvelle Question d'Orient, speaking a little French there. Labarine was an official in the French government and a Gentile who believed in the Jews' historic mission and mighty genius. You were strong in the days of antiquity and strong in the Middle Ages. He was deeply impressed, as so many friends and foes of the Jewish people have been. At least we not forget these religions they have with the Illuminati, the Kabbalah, mysticism, witchcraft, sorcery, Rosicrucians, Freemasonry, and many other secret cults. Things that they swear on a Bible on under threat of death not to divulge the rest of this information to us. That should be concerning to anybody. What do they have to hide? And then you think about the channeled material whereby all these channelers, famous people like Esther Hicks channeling Abraham, do you think there's anything concerning in that information? With millions, maybe billions of people following that stuff. I've been going over those books. I'm going to go over them again. Let's try to understand what they're saying to us, these beings from some invisible realm. All right, so he was deeply impressed, as so many friends and even foes of the Jewish people have been, by their sheer capacity for survival in the face of the oppression from the Greeks, the Romans, the kings, the Jesuits. And I understand the creator of the Jesuits was part Jewish. Some things were being deceived, I believe. Now he says they must set forth with their French friends to rescue the Holy Land from the Turk. That's why they had World War I and World War II. The Ottoman Empire from Turkey controlled the Middle East. They would not let the Jews settle in Palestine. They had to be destroyed. They brought about World War I, World War II. Those were reasons people don't think about. But if you read all these books, it's pretty clear. Whom Lorraine detested as much as did English contemporaries like Colden, and built the gates of Jerusalem. Although his belief in the need for a Jewish homeland was based on admiration of the Jews in their historic existence, remember, these people were controlling huge amounts of money and industry. They were buying off politicians and leaders. Lorraine was clear-sighted enough to see the problem of Jewry as it actually was, the passivity of the poor Orthodox Eastern Jews. So the poor Orthodox Eastern Jews, they were very passive. They weren't revolutionary active. And the indifference of the rich, emancipated Western Jews. So a lot of Jews who moved towards the West were wealthy and they didn't care. So these people behind the promotion of the Jewish culture and unity had to deal with the passive, poor Orthodox Jews and the indifference of the rich, emancipated Jews. So there was a lot of work to organize these groups of people, a lot of taunting them, calling them names and traitors to their people. Took a lot of work, a lot of money, and a lot of people died. And it's not over yet. And when the whole thing does come about, how is the world going to like being ruled by these aristocratic minded Kabbalistic people? Read the Protocols of Zion. Look at my series 67, The Jewish Utopia. Read my video I made on Jack Bernstein's book, An American Jew Moves to Israel. Watch one of my many videos on many other books on these topics. Nestor Webster. As a friend, he reproached the Jews from the outside, Hess from the inside. Rome and Jerusalem is a prescription for making the Jews happy. It proposes what before long began to happen. Rich Jews should buy land in Palestine to be colonized by poor Jews. So this is an effort to colonize the Middle East, and as we're all aware since 9/11 and before, the Middle Eastern peoples and those countries are being destroyed. And many of those Arabs are being dispersed to all the other countries that they're trying to globalize and destroy nationalism. A Hungarian rabbi was ready to go see the Sultan, that would be of Turkey, of Constantinople, with the encouragement of the Turkish ambassador in Vienna to sell him on this scheme of the rich Jews buying land and populating that land with poor Jews. And look where we are today. This belief that the Porte could be cajoled or bought was to be a persistent theme of Zionism for another 60 years. So they were trying to buy off the leader of the Ottoman Empire. And he finally staggered off the stage of history. And why wouldn't the Ottoman Empire stagger off the stage of history after dealing with World War I and World War II? You can't take on the power of these Illuminati, Zionist, communist, Jewish people who control the money supplies and the politicians. with the anti-defamation leagues and political PACs, political action committees that control our leaders, and the banking systems and industries, and apparently control the intelligence groups and military organization with all these high-tech weapons. I think we're in trouble. It's been a game in the making for a couple thousand years, as per the Bible. And these satanic forces wanting to bring back an Antichrist, and apparently they have to accomplish some goals before the Antichrist can come here. I wonder if CERN has anything to do with that. Opening these portals like the archways to Baal they're putting all over the world, or all these other weird symbolisms in buildings and pyramids and obelisks, and a lot of people joining these different cults. Look at how many people have all the body piercings of metals and tattoos of daggers and demons and eyes. This is no small thing, I keep saying. It was characteristics of the high enthusiasm of these idealists, characteristics maybe also of their capacity for self-delusion. The Ottomans may have been decadent and corrupt, trying to see where this sentence ends. A different color in the light of what succeeded Ottoman rule. Not universal peace and prosperity, but mutually competitive and bloody nationalisms. But Hess's belief, and later Herschel's, the guy who wrote the book The State of Israel, the Jewish nationalism could be slipped into a super-national Ottoman Empire, overlooked the intuitive sense of its own nature, which even the embattled institution, perhaps embattles ones most of all, may possesses. So what they're trying to do, from my interpretation of this sentence, they are trying to slip the Jewish nationalism, the Jewish people even controlling the USA, into a supranational world empire. But regrettably, regrettably for them, some people are waking up. But that's causing some kind of acceleration, it seems, into the activities and plans of the New World Order, New Age globalists. The Porte instinctively understood that it could tolerate on its own terms any number of religions, but that it could not compromise with the national principle. And we in the United States today should not compromise with our nationalism. But you got citizens, ignorantly, I believe, marching down to Mexico, trying to get President Donald Trump to not put up a wall, to not have any defenses, and to have open borders, but try to go get into Israel. So what they want for them is not what they want for us. Although Roman Jerusalem presents itself as a practical blueprint, its real purpose is moral, an analysis, and a reproach. It was not the first scheme for restoring the Jews to the Holy Land. But it was the first time in the 19th century that a Jewish writer had looked with real penetration into the Jewish question as it had been created by the emancipation, and at the emancipated Jew for whom Hess feels undisguised contempt. So like I said, the emancipated Jew for whom Hess feels undisguised contempt. The real dishonorable Jew is not the old type pious one who would rather have his tongue cut out than utter a word of denial of his nationality, but the modern kind, ashamed of his nationality because of the hand of fate is pressing heavily upon his people. These frightened, self-denying Jews mistake the problem when they are baptized or merely forsake their religion. The Germans hate the religion of the Jews less than they hate their race. They hate the particular faith of the Jews less than their particular noses. In other words, Hess says, the Jews have certain irreducible characteristics which they cannot shed. In trying to pretend otherwise, they are in denial, and the modern phrase goes, and this can only make them neurotic and unhappy. Hess even makes the same point as Wagner about creativity, though in a different way. The Holy Spirit, the creative genius of the people out of which Jewish life and teaching arose, deserted Israel when its children began to be ashamed of their nationality. By reaffirming this nationality, therefore, creativity will return. His project for rebuilding a Jewish homeland in Palestine is almost a metaphor or poetic image, as he comes close to admitting. He plainly concedes that the bulk of the Jewish people are not likely to migrate to the Holy Land, even if the opportunity arose. So that's what I've been saying from the books I've read and the other stuff. They had to create crises, terrorism, anti-Semitism, to get a lot of Jews to move. This was all an intentional program. It is all today an intentional program. Just like they're getting all the Arabs to move out of the Middle East into Europe and the United States in the middle of the night. They don't care about the economic situation in Brazil, in the USA, in Mexico, in France, in Germany, or anywhere in the world. There is a much bigger game afoot. They had not all returned thither after the Babylonian exile. After all, and we therefore need not expect such a miracle as a feature of future restoration. I'm just going to read a little more here and finish this video. Hess was the first true Zionist visionary, and he was the first to anticipate one problem. What if many or most of the Jews of the diaspora did not wish to return to the homeland? So a lot of the Jewish people did not want to go live in that undeveloped desert. For one thing, Hess was implicitly looking for a solution to the material problem of the great Jewish population of Central and Eastern Europe, the uncivilized countries. So all these countries all over Europe, he considered the uncivilized countries. Even he did not foresee in the 1860s how much graver these problems would become in his lifetime. Those assimilated Westerners could become better Jews and better men by identifying themselves closely to the Zionism idea. So there was a lot of patriotic sentimentism for Judaism, nationalism, the creationist state of Israel, and apparently, according to books like the Jewish Utopia and Protocols of Zion, and many other books, this leadership or taking control of the whole world, which entails destroying Christianity and other religions as we know it, and bringing us the world that they're bringing us. The movie Hunger Games, Modern Family, gay agenda, transgenderism, and they're using fear and biodiversity, sustainability, global warming, and apparently high technological weapons, electromagnetic weapons, radiations, directed energy beams, dumping chemicals in the sky, toxins in the food, toxins in the water, killing the bugs, plants, bees, birds, animals, oceans, and everything. There is this serious plan in play to change the world, and apparently whenever they do it, they do not want any food supplies available for the peoples of the world to survive on. Very scary indeed when you start paying attention to this stuff. Thank you for watching my video, Rick Miracle Reporting.